Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. So I'll take you through a couple of key steps to building an authentic marketing campaign. And there are a million steps to this process. And any of you who have done marketing and advertising know that intimately. But we'll touch on a few things. And then at the end, we can talk more. If you guys have questions, want to probe on anything further, we can go from there. Cool? All right. So advertising, as you know, and marketing isn't as easy as picking a cool idea, putting it out there, and then it being successful. I guess sometimes that happens. But when you're trying to make a connection with consumers and when you're trying to make your brand relevant to your potential consumers, you have to find a way for those two entities to click. And that comes from being really thoughtful about what your brand stands for, but also being really thoughtful about who you're speaking to and making sure that you're meeting a need that person has. So one of the first things you need to do is build out your brand strategy. This is hard. In the advertising world, we used to create these things called a brief, a one-page document where you had to cull down what your brand stands for, who your consumer is, and what you want to say to them in one page. And it made you be very judicious and very thoughtful about what you wanted to say. Sometimes it gets longer, but it just challenges you to think more about who you're speaking to. So there are a couple of things that are part of your brand strategy. And I'm going to talk about Oscar as my example as we go throughout, so you can kind of see how it applies and then see how it relates to the real world. But one of the first things is thinking about the background. What's happening in the marketplace? Who are your competitors? What are they saying? Are they similar to you? Are they different? But just getting that background down and understanding, what's out there. The next piece is thinking about who you're talking to. Your consumer is the most important entity in that whole story, and so keeping them in mind as you're thinking about your strategy is part of the game. And then the next piece is what you want to say to them. So okay, if you're brand A, what are you going to say about brand A that's really relevant to your consumer? And then what do you want them to feel as a result of telling them that story? And then finally, giving your support points. Why is this story true? Why is brand A really important? And those proof points become part of your advertising message over time. So, thinking about background for Oscar. I joined Oscar in October of 2013, so I've been there for the past 2 years and have been a part of the growth of this brand. When we launched, it was the Phase 2 of the Affordable Care Act. It was when these healthcare exchanges were launching across the country. So some of you are probably independent contractors and you're probably intimately aware of it. Others of you probably have no thoughts on it. But it was the biggest change in the healthcare industry since the implementation of Medicaid and Medicare. So you had this new platform happening. You had confusion around that platform. You had consumers that typically don't like health insurance. And we were trying to stand out in this space and launch ourselves. So part of our background is that, healthcare has been and still is, honestly, terribly confusing. I read a stat a while ago, I think when I was interviewing for Oscar, that said that health insurance is as liked as the IRS, right? And that's to say not liked at all. People can't stand it. And it's easy to understand why. You have companies that historically see other big companies as their consumer, not the individual. There's yet to be, until Oscar came around, a company that focused on the needs of the everyday person. So this was part of our background. We were launching in this space that didn't focus on the people who really mattered the most. Then thinking about our consumer target. I'm far simplifying it. We had data on, where the uninsured lived and, income levels and different things like that, and also just media habits and detailed information about who we wanted to speak to. But in a general level, we were speaking to the uninsured, people who couldn't get insurance through their company or through their partners. But these are also people that have had poor experiences with the healthcare industry to date. So they're bringing baggage into this industry. So we were entering a hard space. And then thinking about Oscar. Pardon me. Oscar uses technology to simplify and humanize the healthcare space. So it's an odd thing to say technology can humanize anything, but it is true. We created this platform and this health insurance company that is built on focusing on the individual from day one. And we build tools and experiences that meet those consumers' needs. And the idea of bringing humanity to a space that hasn't really focused on everyday people has been a differentiator for us and has driven everything that we've done. So if that's the main thing that we wanted to say to consumers, then I have to give you the proof points, right? I mentioned, like, you have to kind of outline why you're saying this and why it's unique to your brand. So Oscar simplifies healthcare, right? We're using data to give consumers this deceptively simple and easy interface. We use high-touch customer care to answer questions that people have. Oscar guides you. So we want to guide you to the best care. You know, not just send you out into the world and be on your own, but everything we do is focused on helping you find the right care when you need it. And our platform is built to support that. And our customer service team is there to do that as well. We understand our customers' needs. We really do pay attention to what people say. I don't know if any of you guys have followed us on social media, but if someone comes to social and they have an issue, we track them down and find out what's going on and try to rectify that issue, but also learn from that experience. But above and beyond troubleshooting, again, we're focusing on everyday people in a way that hasn't been done before and building tools to support them. And then finally, we often say internally, having Oscar is like having a doctor in the family. So we have a telemedicine platform that we call Doctor on Call. You can have a doctor call you any time of day, 24/7, and you can talk to them about an issue that you're having. They can prescribe to you, they can send it to your local pharmacy. I've used it plenty of times. Clearly, I always have some kinds of issues, being pregnant, but it really does put people at ease and also helps them from going into other kinds of healthcare solutions that might honestly be expensive for that consumer. All right, so that's phase one, right? That's your strategy. Now, the next phase is thinking about creative development. And this is I think the strategy stuff is fun, but this is really fun too, and it's like the glitzy kind of stuff. But you want to take that strategy and you actually want to brief your creative partners to help you evolve that strategy from words on paper to actually a beautiful creative execution. And work starts out pretty rough, but throughout that process and getting to the final product, you create this beautiful, seamless experience, hopefully together. So you want to brief your creative partners with that strategy document that you've developed. And then you'll work together to review creative concepts. And usually it's not just one concept, it's multiple concepts. So you have the burden, but also the benefit of picking through a lot of interesting creative work to find the campaign that makes sense for you and your brand. And then finally, picking a direction, which can be very subjective, or you could test it, or you could do any number of things, but I'll talk about how we picked a direction for Oscar. So some of you have probably seen our advertising in the subways, right? We took over Union Square, we took over everywhere. We were on the trains, we were on TV, radio, all kinds of places. And we have a distinct look, but it didn't actually exactly start out that way. This is an example of some of the early creative concepts. So when I started in advertising, we used to have illustrators on staff, people who would sit down and hand illustrate concepts. Now we've gotten to this place where it looks very slick and like a complete product, but this is a rough concept. And the idea is to kind of start to paint the tonality and paint the look and feel of the campaign. So this copy was meant to get to like the ethos of what we were trying to do. That we were trying to disrupt the health insurance space. Here are some other concepts delving further into that idea. And so you can see the tone of some of the work that's already out there in the marketplace now evolving throughout this creative. We even went further to talk about, our transparency, how we try to tell you the cost of your health care before you go into the doctor. And so the advertising evolved over time to really pull out more specific proof points about what we do. And then we also did work, quite a bit of work, targeting the Hispanic population. And it was really important, I think, to all of us that we did creative that weren't just direct translations of the English language work, but were cultural interpretations. So, this is talking about, because home remedies can fail, we offer you free generic drugs, right? So, of course, I'm not a fluent speaker, so I'm totally botching it, but that's the concept. So it still has that same wink and smile of all the other creative we've done. So that's how we started out. And then we thought that we needed to create these like online videos to tell the Oscar story in a different way. And that's actually where the characters came from that some of you have seen in our old creative, and I'll show you examples of that. But it started out like this. This was part of the original creative inspiration for those short online videos we were doing, right? So the idea here is bold, simple, graphic colors, right? Very iconic. Animation that has some humor and fun to it. Some of you guys have probably seen this video online. After seeing this initially, we started working with a partner to pick a look and feel for the creative. So this was like phase 2 of the process. So you can see like it's just inspiration. As a marketer, you have to keep in mind, okay, who am I speaking to? How do I want to speak to them? You need to keep all the strategic pieces in mind that we had already outlined as you start to evaluate this creative. But also have fun with it. If something speaks to you, go with it. So this was the original work. So, getting to the final execution, all right? You got to have your brief in hand. All right, your strategy. Make sure you keep that with you because it's part of your process of evaluating what you think you should do. Your work should track back to that strategy because that's your North Star, right? But now you've seen where we started. This is an example of where we've ended up creatively with Oscar. So that same kind of humor, that same feel, picking up the illustrated characters that we developed for TV or video spots, but evolving this to be a more sophisticated campaign. HMO, PPO, WTF. I don't know if any of you could get confused by these acronyms, but even we do. Health insurance that won't make your head explode, and if it does, you're covered. I think that was one of the lines of the earlier work that I just showed you. And now you can start to see examples of what it actually looks like laid out in a particular medium. This is the layout of some of the out-of-home subway work that we've done. And you can see over here an example of what it looks like in the trains. But this work started to go from like just talking about the ethos of Oscar, but also talking about examples of what we offer, our app, talking about how Oscar is particularly designed for each of you, each individual. And this was the original video, the very first video we produced with these characters. And after we produced this, I think we all internally at Oscar fell in love with the look and feel of this. And it felt relevant to the consumer that we were speaking to. So this is where those concepts started. So I'm going to share this with you.
You never know when you'll need health insurance. But when you do, there's Oscar. We're making it simple, intuitive, and maybe even fun. We're Oscar, a new kind of health insurance company.
Anyway, the idea is basically you never know what's going to happen. all kinds of stuff could happen to you. And so it would help to have health insurance. It was just a way to like click off a thought in people's minds and be one of the many mediums we use to connect with people. We ended up doing all kinds of media over the past 2 years. We dominated the subways. We were all over the radio, podcasts, WNYC. We ran quite a bit of TV creative, paid search, digital banners, and all of that work kept up with the tonality of this overall campaign and kept the overall look and feel and kept that consistency. It even permeated other elements of the work that we did to focus on our members. So from our social media perspective, this is the cast of characters, and they're actually on our social media platforms. They're on our Facebook page, and our Twitter skin looks like this as well. This is our insurance in the box, and actually this version was designed by Brian, who's here with me today. And you can see the consistency of where we started from a marketing perspective carried over into what the consumer the member sees once they have become an Oscar member. We want to be sure that there's this line that goes in between the two worlds of being a consumer and then actually being a member, and we want that to be consistent across the board. One of the things we did work on this year was kind of stretching ourselves a little bit. So we never had a chance in marketing to actually show consumers what the member experience looks like. What does it look like when you actually go onto the site and see your timeline and see your history of your healthcare experience? And so this year, for the first time, we used that. And what you'll see in this execution is that it looks quite different from where we started out from a campaign perspective, but it still ties into the tonality of Oscar. It still has some elements of that look and feel, but stretches ourselves a little bit further. And hopefully we can get sound on this.
At Oscar, we imagined a better kind of health insurance. One that lets you sign up in minutes. When something's wrong, you can find care immediately. And right in your neighborhood. We even keep track of your care, so you don't have to. Welcome to a better kind of health insurance. Oscar. Visit hioscar.com or call to enroll today.
Thank you. So this is my last slide, and I won't belabor this too much, but one of the things that is core to what we do is testing, optimizing, and iterating. That's core to what we do. Data is so important. Some platforms are much easier to measure. Paid search, easy to measure. Subway stuff, a little bit harder, but we do survey people when they call us to sign up to find out how they've heard about us, and almost 30% of people say, Subway ads. So that is a way to measure the platform. But what we have done throughout our campaigns is test new copy lines, test new benefit points in the digital space, and as much as possible, bring them to the offline space. Take lines that really seem motivating, that people interact with, that people click through on, that we get leads from, and pull that into the radio creative, or pull that into the out-of-home creative. So we're constantly changing our campaign throughout the year. You guys may not see it, but whenever we're up and running in marketing, we're constantly iterating on what we've done. We never stay static. So that's it. Thanks for your time, you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Veronica. We've got time for some Q's and A's if anyone